The ballroom of Ashmore glittered like something out of a dream that wasn't hers. Candlelight spilled across marble, the color of cream, and everywhere. Wren looked. There were women. Noble women. Women in silk, the color of crushed roses. Women with diamonds at their throats. Women who had never in their lives knelt on a cold floor to scrub at anything. They spun and laughed and floated across the dance floor like they'd been born, knowing they belonged there. And Wren was on her knees, scrubbing at a wine stain. Because of course she was. She pressed the rag down hard against the marble, watching the red bloom and fade under her hands. 3 more hours. That was all. 3 more hours of this glittering circus, and then she could crawl back to her narrow bed above the kitchens and pretend none of it had happened. Pretend she hadn't spent the whole night invisible on the floor, while the most beautiful women in 7 kingdoms competed for a man who couldn't hold a thought in his head longer than a heartbeat. She blew a curl out of her face. Auburn stubborn forever, escaping whatever she did to tame it. And her eyes, without her permission, without her wanting them to, lifted to him. King Rowan moved through the crowd like water finding its way downhill. Easy, smooth, certain of where it was going. He bowed over one gloved hand, murmured something that made a duchess flush pink to her ears. And then he was already turning, already gone, already smiling at the next one. His smile never changed. That was the thing about it. It stayed exactly the same from woman to woman, warm and bright, and utterly perfectly hollow. That was simply Rowan, generous with his charm, careless with his heart. A dangerous combination in a king, and a worse one in a man. And as if he could feel her watching, as if some thread ran between them, that neither of them had ever agreed to his gaze cut across the whole crowded ballroom, and found hers. He winked. One corner of his mouth lifted. Wren scowled and looked back down at her stain, because she was immune to him. Completely. Entirely. Or if she was being honest with herself in the privacy of her own skull, she was entirely devoted to appearing immune to him, which was a very different thing, and far more achievable. Being immune would have required not noticing, and she noticed everything. She noticed the dimple that appeared when his smile turned real instead of practiced. She noticed the way his laugh, the true one, the rare one, made something warm unfurl low in her chest like a cat stretching in sunlight. She noticed. She just refused to admit it. Tonight wasn't merely a ball. It had been arranged for one purpose, and one purpose only. The King of Ashmore was to choose a bride. His council had insisted. Finally, collectively exhausted. They'd grown weary of his wandering eye, and not only because a kingdom needs an heir. No. The trouble was diplomatic. Every noble daughter the king charmed and then forgot became a slighted house, a bruised alliance, a father muttering into his wine about honor. Rowan's affections had become a foreign policy problem. And yet, his terrible reputation hadn't kept a single one of them away. 100 noble women. Princesses from kingdoms. Wren couldn't have found on a map. They'd all come. Maybe it was the crown. Maybe it was the vast, green, prosperous stretch of Ashmore rolling out beyond the palace walls. Or maybe it was those dimples. Wren wouldn't know. She absolutely did not notice things like that. A boot came down beside her hand. Close. Too close. And the smell reached her before the shadow did a scent thick with self-regard, expensive and sour all at once. Her wolf senses prickled. She had the sharpest nose in the palace, Sharper than the hounds, sharper than anyone. It was the one gift no one could take from her, even after they'd taken everything else. She could track a lie by the way fear changed a man's sweat. She could have been a scout, a tracker, a guardian of the realm, if she'd been born a man. But the old King Rowan's father had barred women from the guard, and by the time that king was cold in the ground, her training had come too late, and her grandmother, the royal healer, who'd taught her everything, was cold in the ground, too. So instead she scrubbed floors and smelled arrogance in expensive boots. "Is there a reason you're blocking my path, girl?" The voice came from above, cold and clipped. A nobleman. Lord somebody. They were all Lord somebody. Wren didn't look up. "To better lick your boots, my lord." Why else? The silence that followed had a texture to it. "How dare you?" And then a shadow fell across them both, and the nobleman's face drained of color so fast, Wren almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Because she didn't need to turn around to know exactly who was standing behind her. She knew that scent, the way she knew her own heartbeat. Pine and wood smoke and something warm underneath it. "Lord Aldrich," Rowan's voice was silk laid over steel. "I believe the Emberwood delegation is looking for you." The nobleman retreated without a single word, and Wren would have thanked her king for that. She really would have, if hadn't immediately ruined it. "Enjoying your evening, Freckles," she kept scrubbing. "That stain coming off the way you hoped," she kept scrubbing. She knew what she was doing. She knew exactly what it did to him. Because Rowan could bear almost anything except being ignored. It undid him. It always had, ever since they were children, and she'd learned that the surest way to drive him mad was to look straight through him, as though he were made of glass. She watched from the corner of her eye as something flickered across his face. And then, slowly, deliberately, the King of Ashmore tipped his goblet. Red wine poured onto the marble beside her knee. "Oh," he said without a trace of shame. "How clumsy of me." Wren finally looked up. "Don't you have anyone else to torment, one of the 100 ladies who traveled across the world just to be entertained by you?" "They're not as entertaining as you." He crouched down to her level, which he had no right to do, a king crouching on a ballroom floor, and the whole room pretended not to see. "I can hardly ask them to clean up after me. You can hardly keep your hands off them either." His eyes lit like she'd handed him something. "Does that bother you, Freckles?" And there it was, the trap, the one he set every single time. "The only thing that bothers me," she said, "is having to watch it." "For someone who hates watching," he murmured, "you certainly do a great deal of it." Heat crawled up her neck. Because he wasn't wrong. That was the worst part. He was never quite wrong. "Your Majesty." A voice cut between them, sweet and desperate, and a woman appeared at Rowan's shoulder, like she'd been waiting behind a pillar for exactly this moment. Lady Isolde of the Marsh Wold. Wren knew her. Everyone knew her. Rowan had sent her away 3 months ago, without so much as a goodbye, and here she was pressing a fresh goblet into his hand like an offering. "Please," Isolde purred, "allow me to fetch you another." Wren stared at her. Openly. She couldn't help it. The woman had been discarded like a wilted flower and had come back for more tail-wagging, and Wren felt something twist in her chest that she refused to name. She would never do that. Not for any man. Not for a king. "Freckles." Rowan's eyes never left Wren's face as he took the drink. "Fetch me one of those strawberry things from the table, would you?" Wren stood, bones aching, and went to fetch him the strawberry thing, because it was her job. which was completely different from Isolde's shameful little display. Entirely different. She told herself that the whole way to the table. Can you believe it? The voice belonged to Bly, the young valet, materializing at her elbow the way he always did, tugging nervously at his livery. He was a sweet, anxious thing, forever looking like the world was about to end. Our king, getting engaged, tonight. No, Ren said. I can't. Aren't you even a little excited? Think of it. A royal wedding. Celebrations across the whole kingdom. That man can't hold his attention on a woman for 3 days. She plucked a strawberry pastry from the tray. He's not about to do it for a lifetime. If you ask me, said another voice, and here came the kitchen maid, Pell, sliding in beside them with a knowing look. He only carries on like that because he knows you're watching. Pell was small and quick-eyed, and had never once in her life kept an opinion to herself. He does it, Ren said flatly, because he can't stand the thought that someone somewhere might not worship him. She believed that. She had to believe that. Because she'd worked it out a long time ago, alone in her narrow bed, that her indifference was the only thing keeping his attention on her. If she ever melted under that golden gaze the way the others did, he'd be bored of her by breakfast. He'd move on. He'd forget her name. And that was exactly what she should want. To be free of him. Free of his teasing and his winking and the foolish daydreams she couldn't quite kill, no matter how hard she tried. And yet, when his eyes found hers across the dance floor, and they did again, always, Ren knew the truth she'd never say aloud. She could not bear the thought of those eyes never seeking hers again. A mating bond is forever, Pell said softly. Once he chooses, if he chooses. Ren's heart gave an ugly little skip, which I doubt. He's far too fickle. True mates were rare among wolves, rarer still among kings where fate always lost to politics. That's your king you're speaking of, Thorn, the steward, sliding past with his eternal clipboard, hissing the words under his breath. Mind your tongue. Ren bit back what she wanted to say, which was that the king of Ashmore had roughly the maturity of a 12-year-old. And she knew this for a fact because she'd known him at 12, and he had not improved. A memory rose before she could stop it. Rowan gangly and grinning, slipping a garden snake into her bed. Her chasing him through the hedges with murder in her heart. Both of them ending up in the fountain, soaked and laughing so hard they couldn't breathe. The good old days, Thorn would call them. They hadn't been good. They'd tormented each other mercilessly. She missed them so much it frightened her. You must learn your place, Thorn was saying, and show proper decorum but Ren had stopped listening. Because something was wrong. Across the ballroom, Rowan had stopped moving. He stood very still in the middle of a turn, one hand half lifted toward his partner, and his head tilted like a man listening for a sound only he could hear. He blinked. Once. Twice. Too slow. His eyes weren't focusing right. Is he drunk? She murmured. Ren. Thorn was still going. This is exactly what I mean. You cannot simply... Something's wrong. Rowan swayed. His hand found the edge of a table and gripped it, knuckles white, and the goblet slipped from his other hand and shattered on the marble in a spray of red. A few heads turned, then a few more. The music faltered, and Ren was already moving. She didn't decide to. Her body decided for her. She was pushing through silk and perfume and startled gasps, shoving past a princess, past a duke, past everyone. Because Rowan never showed weakness in public, not once in 20 years. And if he was faltering now, then it was real, and it was bad. Ren, you cannot simply address the... Thorne's voice fell away behind her. Freckles, Rowan breathed when he saw her, and the relief that crossed his face, raw and unguarded, hit her, somewhere she wasn't ready for. He sagged against her the moment she reached him. His full weight, and he was heavy, all of him, leaning into her as though she were the only solid thing in a tilting world. "What's wrong?" she whispered. "Rowan, look at me. What's wrong?" His golden eyes swam, trying to fix on her face. I think I... The words died. His eyes rolled back, and he fell. Ren lunged, caught him. His weight drove her straight to her knees, marble cracking against bone, his head lolling back into the crook of her arm. She barely felt the pain. She cradled his skull, brushed the dark hair off his forehead, with a hand that had started to shake. "Rowan." Barely a sound. "Stay with me. Please. Please stay with me." For one heartbeat, just one, his gaze cleared. He looked up at her face, and there was something in it she had never seen before. Something that looked almost like wonder, like a man seeing sunlight after a long time underground. Then his hand slid from her sleeve and dropped to the floor, and the ballroom exploded. Someone screamed the word assassin. Guards came crashing through the crowd. Nobles recoiled in a wave, gasps rippling out and above it all. Thorne was bellowing for the doors to be sealed. No one leaves, no one leaves. Step away from His Majesty. A guard's hand closed on Ren's arm. She wrenched free. "Don't be an idiot, Halvard. It's me." "Sorry, Ren. Captain's orders." "Then tell Garrick where he can put his orders." More guards. A wall of them closing in, shielding the fallen king from the panicking court. Diplomats shouting for their ambassadors. A princess sobbing. None of it mattered. None of it touched her. There was only Rowan's face gone slack and gray, and her own heart slamming against her ribs like it wanted out. What would grandmother do? The thought steadied her the way it always did. Her grandmother, the royal healer, dead. These 4 winters had trained her well before the end, trained her hands, her eyes, her nose. Ren steadied herself, pressed 2 fingers to the pulse under Rowan's jaw, and nearly wept. It was there, steady, strong. His skin was cool, but not cold. His nails hadn't darkened. No poison she knew of behaved like this, and she knew a great many. "Rowan," she squeezed his limp hand. "Can you hear me? Squeeze my fingers. Squeeze them." Nothing. Make way for the royal healer. A small wiry woman with silver-streaked hair pushed through the wall of guards. Madame Hespera, who had taken her grandmother's place and never quite let Ren forget it. She dropped to her knees on the king's other side. What happened? He collapsed, all at once, no warning. Ren shifted back to give her room, but her eyes had already snagged on something. The broken goblet. The wine spreading across the marble in a dark red pool. She ducked past a guard's legs before anyone could stop her, snatched a shard of the goblet up and brought it to her nose. Wine, yes. But beneath the wine, something else. Floral. Sweet. Wrong. She knew that smell. She'd smelled it once already tonight. Earlier. On the collar of a foreign man, near the doors. A guest. A stranger who'd watched the room a shade too carefully. Her head came up. Her gaze swept the ballroom past the sobbing and the shoving and landed on a woman near the great doors. A noble woman, pale as milk, wringing her hands in her skirts, watching the king's fallen body with an expression that had far too much guilt in it. Ren knew her, too. She'd watched this very woman press a goblet into Rowan's hand not an hour ago. Their eyes met across the ruined ballroom. The woman's went wide. It was her! Ren was on her feet before she knew she'd stood, one finger flung out like a blade. She poisoned the king. Every head in the room turned. The woman froze. Then her chin came up trembling, and her voice cracked out across the silence. It's not what you think, she cried. He's going to be fine. I can help him. I swear it. I can wake him. Thorn faltered, clipboard sagging. Wait, are you saying you did poison? Yes. A beat. No. Well, not exactly. Garrick, the captain of the guard, put his hand to his sword. Ren crossed the floor in 6 strides and seized the woman by the shoulders. Up close, she was younger than she'd seemed and shaking like a leaf in wind. What does not exactly mean? Ren said very low. What did you do to him? Is he dying? He's sleeping. Hespera's voice cut through the room, calm as still water. The healer sat back on her heels, one hand still on the king's chest. His heart is strong. His breathing is even. He is only asleep. See, the woman seized on it, half hysterical. He's perfectly fine. He's only taking a little nap. You drugged him. Ren's grip tightened. You put him to sleep in the middle of his own ball. Were you planning to take him? Was that it? Steal him away while we were all distracted? No. Tears spilled over. I would never hurt him. I love him. And something in Ren's chest went sharp and hot and dangerous because the idea that this woman could stand here and speak of love after this made her wolf rise up, snarling under her skin. Arrest her, Ren said. She drugged the king in his own hall. She meant him harm. My intentions were pure. The woman wept openly now. Driven by nothing but the purest love, I swear it, I swear. All right, all right. Thorn stepped between them, hands raised, harried and gray-faced. My lady, perhaps you might explain why you gave His Majesty a sleeping draught. The woman lowered her eyes, demure suddenly in a way that made Ren's skin crawl. It isn't exactly a sleeping draught, she said softly. Ren lunged. Garrick caught her around the waist and hauled her back before her fingers found the woman's throat. It's a love potion, the woman gasped out, stumbling backward. It's a love potion. A beat of silence fell over the whole ballroom, and then the room detonated. A love potion. Isn't that illegal? She's trying to enchant the king. She's trying to steal the crown. Voices climbing over. Voices, a princess shrieking that the woman should be thrown in the deepest cell they had. Everyone be quiet. Ren's voice tore out of her with a weight she didn't know she carried, a low command that rang off the marble, the voice of a wolf who expected to be obeyed. And the room fell silent. Even she was surprised. She turned, snapped her fingers at Thorn. You, take this woman somewhere quiet and get every word out of her. What was in it? How it works? How to undo it? All of it. I can tell you now, the woman started. And you. Ren rounded on Garrick. I want to know how an illegal potion walked into a royal ball, past your guards, past every nose in this palace, and ended up in the king's hand. I want to know who let it happen. Garrick, captain of the king's guard, 20 years her senior, nodded like a scolded boy. Yes, of course. A voice slid out of the crowd, oily and amused. Shouldn't someone more suitable be handling this? A foreign man. Silver at his temples, a foreign cut to his coat, and Ren's nose flared because she knew that scent. The floral sweetness. Faint but there. The same note that had ruined the wine. The man went on gesturing at Ren, like she was a stain on the floor herself. Surely His Majesty would prefer someone other than a maid to manage his affairs. Approving murmurs rose around him. Ren walked straight up to him. Slow, watching the way his pulse jumped in his throat, the way his scent spiked sour under the sweetness. "Did you help her?" she asked, quiet enough that only the front rows heard. "Did you help her hurt the king?" "What, of course not." "Then why is your heart racing?" The man swallowed. She watched his throat move. "I merely meant," he said, smoothing his voice back into silk, "that surely a matter of this importance calls for someone of rank." "You'd be surprised what he trusts her with," Thorn muttered, not quite under his breath. But the man had planted his seed, and Ren felt it take root in the room. She was a maid. She was no one. And this was already, she understood with a cold drop in her stomach, an international incident. A hall full of foreign princesses and ambassadors, and the King of Ashmore stretched out cold on his own ballroom floor. Thorn drew her aside, his voice low and pained. "He's not wrong, Ren. God help me, I trust you more than half the guard. But look at how this appears. To all these kingdoms, a maid in charge of the king's life." She clenched her jaw. Because he was right. She hated that he was right. "I'll tell you everything," the pale woman called out, wringing her hands. "Including how to wake him." Ren went still. "How to wake him?" she repeated. She turned slowly. "You mean he won't wake on his own when the potion wears off?" Another silence, longer than the last. "Well," the woman said, "not exactly." Ren went for her again. This time it took 2 guards. "But it's fine," the woman insisted, backing toward the wall. "Truly, it's a love potion, so he'll wake through an act of true love. He'll wake when he's kissed." She lifted her chin, and something almost proud came into her wet eyes. Kissed by the woman he truly loves. The floor dropped out from under Ren's feet. "The woman he truly loves," she said. Her voice came out strange, far away. "But he falls in love every 5 minutes. He has never loved anyone longer than a week. How in the world are we meant to find? The spell wouldn't work if he didn't love someone." The woman tossed her hair, gathering herself, wrapping confidence around her like a stolen cloak. "Which, of course, is me. Rowan and I are in love. We have been for months. His council forced him to send me away, forced him to find a princess. But I did this to prove it. To prove to all of you the truth of what we are." "That's not what happened," one of the old counselors began. "He loves me," the woman pressed on louder, "and this magic will show you all. Surely you cannot expect him to marry some princess when the spell itself will prove I am the one he wants for his queen." The ballroom erupted again, and Ren stood frozen in the center of it, cold dread spreading through her chest like ice across a pond. Because there was a question underneath all of this that she could not make herself ask. What if it's true? What if he did love someone all this time in secret? What if there was a woman his heart had chosen, and he'd hidden her behind all that teasing, and all those winks, and all that careless charm? What if it was never going to be me? The crowd parted to let the pale woman approach the fallen king. She knelt beside him with a grace that had clearly been practiced, folded her hands, and bent low. "My love," she whispered loud enough for the front row to hear. "I'll bring you back to us." She pressed her lips to his. The whole room held its breath. She lingered and lingered. and then pulled back her face, bright with expectation. Rowan did not stir. His chest rose and fell slow and even. His face stayed slack and peaceful. A frown crossed the woman's features. A flicker of doubt. Perhaps, offered an elderly duchess from the back, you must put more feeling into it. The woman tried again. She cupped the king's face in both hands and kissed him, with everything she had, with desperation. Now, with something close to panic. When she pulled away, Rowan was as deeply peacefully asleep as before. A murmur rolled through the crowd, and Wren, who had been holding her breath without realizing it, let it out slow and shaking. "If His Majesty does not love this lady," Thorn said slowly, staring at the sleeping king, "then who does he love?" 100 pairs of eyes turned as one toward the assembled princesses, and every single one of them straightened her spine, lifted her chin, and smoothed her gown. Wren looked at them, all of them. A wall of beautiful, hopeful, powerful women, any one of whom could give Rowan an alliance, an army, a queen the world would bow to. And then she looked down at the man on the floor, at the dark hair fallen across his forehead, at the face that in sleep had lost its arrogance and its armor, and become again, just for a moment, the boy who'd chased her through the gardens with a snake in his fist. "Stay with me," she'd whispered. "Please stay with me." And a foreign man, near the doors, silver at his temples, watched it all with the faintest curl of satisfaction at the corner of his mouth, as though everything were unfolding precisely as it should. Wren's nose flared. She didn't understand yet what she'd caught. But some deep animal part of her, the part that had never once been wrong, whispered that this night was only beginning, and that it was going to be a very long one. They moved the king to a low platform of velvet cushions, and Wren appointed herself without asking anyone the coordinator of kisses. Somebody had to, because the alternative was letting 100 strange women maul him where he lay, and Wren's wolf would not survive that. It was already pacing under her skin, hackles up, teeth bared at the whole glittering line of them. "The Princess of the Western Reach will go first," Thorn announced, squinting at his clipboard. Wren narrowed her eyes at the blonde gliding forward. "Absolutely not. She's never said a word to him in her life." "It's His Majesty to you. And how would you know who he has, and hasn't spoken to? Because I know everyone he's ever spoken to." Wren crossed her arms. "All of them." Thorn blinked. "That's not possible." But it was. Because over the years, Wren had built something in this palace that no one had ever noticed her building. A web. Bly told her who the king met with. The cook reported who he dined beside. The maids whispered about who he so much as glanced at across a room. And the postman, dear anxious old Fenwick, let her read the king's letters before they went out. The postman lets you what? "It's for His Majesty's own good," Wren said, already turning away because a red-headed princess was trying to cut the line. "Back of the line, Ottoline. He doesn't like you." And so it began. The kiss parade. Princess after princess. Duchess after duchess. And each one Wren swore was worse than the last. The first one grabbed his hand and cranked it like a pump handle. "You're meant to kiss him," Wren said, "not wrestle him." The second leaned in, too slow, too soft, too much like she meant it. "Time's up. I've barely... Time's up." Wren hauled her back by the elbow. "Oh, look at that. Still asleep. What a tragedy." Next. The third was a duchess whose fingers drifted toward his dark hair. "No touching the hair," Wren barked. "On the cheek. For half a second. I'm counting." The fourth actually wept. genuine tears sliding down a lovely young face, and she pressed a trembling kiss to his cheek and whispered something no one could hear. And for one breath, Ren's whole chest went tight because that one looked real. That one looked like love. Rowan slept on. The girl pulled back, stricken, and understood before anyone told her, and fled the room with her hand over her mouth. And Ren, who had wanted her to fail, felt no triumph at all. Only a strange, hollow ache. Because if a girl who wept like that could fail, what did that mean? The fifth was Ottoline, who had crept back to the front of the line, and who kissed him with the grim confidence of a woman certain of her own heart. And when he did not stir, she went white, then red, and demanded that the healer check whether the spell was even real. And beneath the sniping, beneath the barked orders and the crossed arms, a cold thing was tightening in Ren's chest. Because what if they never found her? What if the woman his heart had chosen wasn't in this room, wasn't in this kingdom? Was a memory, a ghost, someone he'd loved and lost long before tonight, and Rowan would sleep here forever, growing older in his enchanted stillness, while the world moved on without him. A memory surfaced, one she hated, one she'd buried so deep she'd almost convinced herself it wasn't real. 4 years ago, she'd been carrying fresh linens to the king's chambers, the old king still alive then, and voices from the study had made her stop with her hand on the door. "Is this a joke?" the old king had roared. "A common girl, no land, no dowry, no name worth speaking." And Rowan's voice, raw, shaking, furious, in a way she had never once heard him. "There is nothing common about her. She means everything to me." Ren had frozen in this corridor, linens crushed to her chest. The way he'd said it. The tone. Serious. Ding. A boy laying his whole heart on the table in front of a father who would only ever see it as a thing to break. "I know you're infatuated," the old king had snapped. "And I swear to you if you don't put this ridiculous notion aside, I'll see her gone from this palace. Permanently." Shortly after that night, a girl had been sent away to the eastern estate. Her name was Neris, a kitchen maid. Soft brown hair, gentle eyes, the kind of pretty that made men slow down when she passed. Everyone had known Rowan was fond of her, and after she'd gone, Rowan had changed. His easy smile hardened into something with an edge. His teasing turned reckless. He began bringing home a parade of noble women, none of them lasting a week, as though he were trying to fill a hole with sheer volume. What if all of it? Ren thought now, watching another princess fail. What if every one of those women was just him trying to forget her, trying to forget Neris? "That's the last of them." Thorne's voice pulled her back. He was staring at his list. Every eligible noblewoman at the ball has tried. Every princess. Every lady. A hush fell. All eyes turned to Rowan, who slept on, peaceful, untouched by any of it. "Well," someone said into the silence. "What do we do now?" Ren's throat had gone tight and dry, and she heard herself speak before she'd decided to. "I think," she said slowly, "I might know who he loves." Heads turned. Garrick let out a breath of pure relief. "Thank the moon. I was wondering when you'd—" "I think it's Neris." The captain's face went blank. "Who?" "The kitchen maid. She worked here 4 years ago." The words tasted like ash. Before she was sent to the eastern estate. There was something between them. Everyone knew. The old counselors shifted uncomfortable remembering. "It's worth trying," Thorne said at last, gently, the way you'd speak to someone standing at the edge of something high. "We can send riders. Bring her tonight." Ren nodded. Her heart sat in her chest like a stone dropped down a well. Because if bringing Nerys back was what would save him, then she would ride out and fetch the woman herself. She would place Nerys's hand in his. She would stand there and watch him wake for another woman, and she would smile. Even if it broke her into pieces, so small, no one would ever find them all. "I'll go tell the head of house," she said, and turned before anyone could see her face. Wren found Madame Hespera in the staff quarters behind the kitchens, and the old woman took one look at her and said, "You look dreadful, child. Thank you for noticing. Sit, tell me." So Wren told her. The potion, the collapse, the love that only love could wake, the kiss parade and its total humiliating failure, and her theory. Nerys. "We have to bring her back," Wren finished. "I think she's the one he loves." Hespera stared at her. For a long moment, the old woman said nothing at all. And then she reached across and patted Wren's hand, and her eyes had gone soft in a way Wren had never seen them. "Oh," Hespera said. "Oh, my dear. I'm quite sure there are things we might try before that." "We already tried everyone." Wren frowned. "Every woman at the ball. What else is there?" Hespera's face did something complicated. "You tried everyone." Every available young woman in the ballroom kissed him. Nothing happened. "My dear," the healer's voice had gone strange and tender and almost amused. "Not everyone, I think." "Well." Wren counted on her fingers running through the palace roster out of habit. "The kitchen girls came and went all night. They weren't there when he fell. The laundresses left early. Pell was in and out." She paused. "It was really only me and Tessa left in the ballroom when he collapsed, and Tessa's 63 and married 30 years, so—" She stopped, because Hespera had taken her hand in both of hers and squeezed it hard, and the old woman's eyes had actually filled with tears. "Are you all right, dear?" Hespera whispered. Wren pulled back, bewildered. "It's been a long night. Why are you looking at me like that?" "No reason." Hespera dabbed at her eyes and stood abruptly. "No reason at all. Ginger biscuits. You need ginger biscuits." And she bustled off and came back with a plate of them. Wren's childhood favorite, and set them down and pulled out a worn ledger and began flipping through it, while Wren nibbled a biscuit in confused silence. "Nerys was reassigned to the Eastern Estate," Hespera murmured, running a finger down a column of names. "We can send a rider tonight, though it will be hours before she arrives." She glanced up careful. "In the meantime, perhaps we ought to be thorough. Have the rest of the staff try, quietly, to spare the poor king a spectacle." "And I want to question that lady properly," Wren said, "about the potion. And there was a foreign man with her. His scent was all wrong. His heart was going like a rabbit's." "That sounds like work for Captain Garrick." "Right." Wren stood. "I'll find him." Garrick was in the antechamber deep among his lieutenants, and he straightened when he saw her. "Wren, what news?" "I want to question the lady, and the diplomat who kept defending her." Garrick's jaw tightened. "There's a complication. There always is. The lady. Her name is Isolde." He said it carefully. "And she is sister to Queen Sabelle of the Eastern Marches, who married King Osric last spring." Wren went still. "So she's royalty by marriage. Protected. That's not the complication." Garrick lowered his voice. "The complication is that Isolde didn't arrive with her sister's delegation. She came with the ambassador from Draymore, a man named Corvin," and the floor tilted just slightly under Wren's feet. "Because Draymore. Draymore. The silver-haired man," she breathed. "By the doors. That's Corvin. That's who I smelled. You smelled him. On the wine. The same note that ruined the wine was on his collar an hour before Rowan drank it. Her mind was racing now, threads pulling taut, a picture beginning to form in the dark. Garrick. If Isolde came with Draymore and Draymore's scent was in the poison, then this isn't some lovesick girl's mistake. This is Draymore. This is a kingdom. We can't accuse a foreign court on a maid's nose. My nose has never been wrong, and you know it. He did know it. She could see it on his face. We need to question them both, Wren said. Now, tonight. Because if this is a plot to seize the king or shame the kingdom, every hour we waste is an hour they're winning. Garrick nodded slowly. I'll handle the questioning. It's my trade. He met her eyes. You have somewhere else to be. You need to make certain our king wakes up. And Wren wanted to argue. She wanted to be in that room wringing the truth out of Corvin with her own 2 hands. But he was right. So she went back. The king's bedchamber had become a strange and solemn theater. They'd carried Rowan up and laid him on the great 4-poster bed, and a small audience had gathered to watch the staff try their luck. Thorne with his clipboard, Hespera directing traffic, a single-board guard at the door, and Wren standing rigid at the bedside, arms crossed, guarding him. One by one, the women of the palace came in, curtsied, bent nervously over the king's cheek, and one by one they left, and Rowan slept, and the room grew heavier with every failure, until only one was left. Pell. She stopped a full 3 feet from the bed and folded her arms. I don't want to kiss him, she announced. Wren sighed. It's not treason. Just not kissing the king is absolutely treason, Thorne sputtered. It's good sense, Pell shot back. If Wren couldn't wake him, I'm certainly not going to. Wren blinked. What do I have to do with anything? Well, Pell looked at her like she was slow. If anyone could wake him, it'd be you. Obviously. Obviously, Hespera echoed with a sage little nod. Wren laughed. Actually laughed. The idea was so absurd her mind couldn't hold on to it. Would someone please— Now. Hespera cut in smoothly, patting Pell's arm. Let's not add salt to the poor thing's wound. Think of Wren's feelings. Exactly. Wren said, relieved someone was talking sense. Then she stopped. Wait, what feelings? Well, she was rejected only hours ago. Hespera murmured to Pell in a whisper that filled the entire room. The poor dear. Rejected. Wren's voice climbed an octave. Rejected how I'd have to have tried something to be rejected, and last I checked I have not. But you kissed him, Pell said, matter of fact. I did not. Who's still asleep? Pell gestured at his bed. Despite the spell breaking for someone he loves. That's a rejection if I ever saw one. Wren opened her mouth to say she had never kissed this man in her life. Thank you very much when she caught the look blooming on Hespera's face. Suspicion, slow and dawning. Wren hasn't kissed His Majesty, Thorne observed. Hespera's head turned very slowly. She hasn't. She hasn't, Pell gasped. But Hespera set down her ledger. Wren. The old woman's voice had changed entirely. Explain to me. Have your lips touched this man's? Or have they not? Wren took a step back. The bed at her spine. Nowhere to go. I don't know what you want me to— She didn't think she had to, Pell translated, throwing up her hands. You said you tried everyone, Wren, Hespera pressed. I meant the princesses. Wren's voice cracked. Why would I count myself— Why would you not? Hespera's eyes were bright and merciless now. That boy has been circling you since you were both in short clothes. He has been. That's ridiculous. Heat flooded up Ren's neck into her face to the roots of her hair. He's a king. He is not in love with the woman who scrubs his floors. All he's ever done is mock me, and torment me, and parade beautiful women in front of me. He calls me Freckles. Her voice broke humiliatingly, even though he knows I hate it. He flirts with everyone in 7 kingdoms. Everyone. Except... She stopped. Except you, Pell said quietly. The room went still. If he loved me, Ren said, and now she couldn't stop the words tumbling out of her. 4 years too late. He would have said so. He's the king. What's stopping him? He can have anyone in the world he wants. Her hands had curled into fists. Anyone. Which is exactly why it isn't me. It was never going to be me. Oh, Pell said gently, now the teasing gone. She's scared. That's the whole trouble. She's scared to try because then she'll know. Nobody asked you, Ren shouted. And in the ringing silence that followed, Hespera crossed the room and took Ren by both shoulders. Firm, steadying, her patience worn thin, but her eyes so kind. My dear, she said, I understand. After all these years of dancing around each other, you're terrified to find out whether he loves you or not. She gave a small shake. But I promise you, you are the only soul in this entire palace, save perhaps the steward, with any doubt at all as to how this ends. Well, she is only a maid, Thorn offered defensive. How was I to know he loved a maid when all he ever does is... Thank you, Ren snapped. Oh, for the love of... The forgotten guard at the door pushed off the wall, so suddenly everyone jumped. Do you want the king to wake up or not? He demanded. Of course we do, Thorn said affronted. Then for the love of everything good and holy, shut up and let the girl kiss him. And that was how Ren found herself sitting on the edge of the king's bed. 3 sets of eyes drilling into her back, looking down at the sleeping face of the man she had loved her entire life. In sleep, the arrogance was gone. The armor was gone. The winking, the teasing, the golden careless charm, all of it stripped away, leaving only Rowan. The boy who'd put a snake in her bed. The boy who'd argued with her over everything, who'd chased her through the gardens, who had sat beside her all night without a word. The night her grandmother died, holding her hand while she wept. And Ren was scared. She could admit it now in the privacy of her own skull. She was terrified, because how many nights had she lain awake wondering what it would be like to kiss him? How many times had she dreamed this exact impossible moment, only to wake with the bitter taste of never on her tongue? As long as she never tried, she could hope. She could tell herself that maybe, just maybe, underneath all the teasing, he cared. But if she kissed him, and he did not wake, then even that would die, and she would have nothing left but the hard, cold truth. That she had loved him her whole life, and would love him until she died, and it had never once been returned. Fine, she whispered. She leaned down, her lips a breath from his, and the door burst open. Nerys has arrived! Ren jerked back from the king, as if she'd been burned her heart, slamming her face aflame, and the guard at the door unleashed a string of curses foul enough to make even Pell gasp. Ren was on her feet in an instant. Would you look at that? She said too brightly, ignoring the way something in her chest had cracked clean down the middle. Nerys is here. Wonderful. Let her through. Nerys entered the way a candle flame enters a dark room. Hesitant, flickering. Her eyes moved over the gathered faces, uncertain, before landing on Ren, the only face she knew. She was still lovely. Soft brown hair, gentle eyes, that delicate prettiness that hadn't faded in 4 years. The woman Rowan had loved enough to defy his father. The woman whose exile had turned a laughing boy into a hard, restless king. "Welcome back, Nerys," Ren said, and the words came out of her like glass. Nerys curtsied, confused. "I was told the king needed me. Urgently." Her gaze slid past Ren to the bed to Rowan lying still and pale beneath the canopy, and her hand rose to her mouth. "Is he all right?" "Yes." Ren took her hand, led her forward, placed her at the bedside with her own 2 hands, because if she was going to break, she would do it properly all at once, no flinching. "Now that you're here, he will be. All you have to do is kiss him." Nerys looked down at the sleeping king, and then she looked back at Ren, and her lovely face crumpled with a confusion so total, so genuine, that the first thread of doubt slid cold into Ren's stomach. "Kiss him," Nerys said. Why would that wake him?" "Because," Ren said carefully, "he loves you. The spell breaks for true love's kiss." Nerys stared at her, and then Nerys laughed. A small, startled, disbelieving sound, and just as quickly clapped her hand over her mouth as if ashamed of it. "He doesn't love me," she said. The room went very quiet. "He does," Ren insisted, though something had begun to unravel in her chest. 4 years ago, you and he, everyone knew. His father sent you away because of it." "His father sent me away," Nerys said slowly, "because I was asked to make it look that way." The words dropped into the silence like stones into still water. Ren felt her whole body go cold. "What did you say?" she whispered. Nerys twisted her hands in her skirt, and her eyes filled, and when she spoke again, her voice shook. "I was never anyone to him. Not truly. I only ever played the part. I was asked to. And I did it, and I was sent away for it. And I have wondered every day, for 4 years, whether it was the worst thing I ever agreed to." "Asked," Ren repeated. Her lips had gone numb. "Asked by whom?" But Nerys shook her head, tears spilling, and pressed her lips together and would not or could not say. And behind, Ren on the bed, the King of Ashmore slept on, unmoved, unwoken, his heart beating steady and slow beneath an enchantment that only one woman in all the world could break. Beyond the tall windows, the black of the sky had begun just barely to thin toward gray. Dawn was coming, and when dawn came, the delegations would wake, and the tale would spread from court to court that the King of Ashmore lay felled in his own bed, and Draymore would have exactly the weakness it was waiting for. Ren did not go looking for Garrick. She went looking for Corvin, because Nerys had said asked, and Nerys would not say by whom, and Ren already knew. She'd known the moment the word left the girl's mouth. Her nose had known before her heart caught up. She found the ambassador in the antechamber seated, ankles crossed, sipping wine, as though he were a guest at a garden party, and not a man, with a kingdom's worth of guilt soaked into his collar. Garrick stood over him. 2 lieutenants at the door. "Ah," Corvin said when he saw her. "The maid with the remarkable nose. You asked Nerys to lie." Ren didn't slow down. She crossed the room and stopped an arm's length from him, close enough to read every flicker of his pulse. 4 years ago, you asked a kitchen girl to pretend she and the prince were lovers, so his father would send her away. So the old king would think she was the common girl Rowan wanted." The wine paused halfway to Corvin's lips, and that was all she needed. That half-second stutter, that spike of sour under the sweet. "You've been at this a long time," she said softly. "Haven't you?" Corvin set the wine down. You, he said, "are wasted on floors." Talk, or I'll let the captain do the asking, and he's less patient than I am. Garrick's hand settled on the man's shoulder. Heavy. A promise. And Corvin, being the kind of man who loved his own cleverness more than he feared any consequence, talked. I act on the orders of my king, he said, smoothing his sleeve, whose daughter was once offered to yours. Princess Ottoline. You've met her, I believe. Red-headed. Persistent. Ren said nothing. She only remembered the girl trying to cut the line, and the way Rowan had never once looked at her. Corvin's mouth thinned. She loved him, from afar foolishly the way girls do. And when she was presented to him, King Rowan looked at her the way one looks at furniture. He rejected her, publicly, while keeping company with laundresses and kitchen maids and women of no consequence whatsoever. So this is about wounded pride. This is about justice. His composure cracked just at the edges. A princess of Draymore passed over for scullery girls. My king was not merely disappointed. He was insulted, in front of every court on the continent. And so he sent you to poison ours. Not poison. Corvin lifted a finger, pedantic even now. Your own healer confirmed it. He merely sleeps. For how long? And here, Corvin smiled. And Ren's stomach dropped because it was the smile of a man about to spring the true trap, the one under the trap she'd already seen. That, he said, depends entirely on love. The room waited. You've had it backwards all night, Corvin went on, savoring it. All of you. Running your little parade of princesses past his bed. Kiss him, surely he loves one of them. But that was never the shape of the spell. He spread his hands. It was never about whether the king loves the woman kissing him. Ren went very still. It's about whether the woman kissing him, Corvin said, loves the king. The words landed like a stone through ice. Every noble lady from here to the sea kissed him tonight. Corvin continued, gentle, merciless. And not one of them woke him. Do you understand what that means? Not one of them loves him. Your golden king, with all his charm and all his conquests, and there was not a single woman in that ballroom whose heart was truly his. That is the humiliation. Not that he sleeps, that the whole world now knows he was never loved at all. Silence. And then Ren laughed. It surprised even her. It came up out of her chest, short and fierce and disbelieving, and it wiped the satisfaction clean off Corvin's face. You think that breaks him, she said. You think hearing that 100 women he never wanted don't love him is going to shatter the king of Ashmore. She shook her head. You've never met him. You built this whole clever plot, and you never once understood the man you built it around. Because how dare they? How dare they try to humiliate Rowan for being exactly what they had made him? Guarded, distant, unwilling to show a soul the soft places, because every time he had someone had reached in to break them. Perhaps not, Corvin allowed, and now the mask slipped, and something colder showed underneath. But a king incapacitated, a throne standing empty, a realm without its ruler, while my king's armies sit on your border. He let it hang. That destabilizes a kingdom. That makes a king look weak, unless, Ren said. She saw it coming. She saw the whole shape of it now, closing like a snare. Unless Princess Ottoline kisses him, Corvin finished, and wakes him, which she can do, because she, unlike your parade of strangers, truly loves him despite his cruelty. She wakes him, the crisis ends, the kingdom is saved. In exchange for, Ren said, his hand, of course. The thin smile returned. She is a princess. She wakes the king, she marries the king. The alliance my king was denied is made at last. And Draymore's border relaxes, and Ashmore keeps its stability, and everyone goes home happy. The snare closed, and Wren understood with a cold clarity that made her almost admire it, that it was flawless. Low risk for them. Ruinous for Ashmore. Because either the king slept and the kingdom rotted, or he woke into a marriage he had already refused, cornered into the very alliance he'd rejected and made to look grateful for it. It wasn't about waking Rowan at all. It was about owning him. "Well," said a voice from the doorway, dry as old paper. "That does sound perfectly reasonable to me." Hespera stood there, Ottoline beside her, red hair, gleaming chin lifted, having clearly heard she was about to become a queen. "Unless, of course," Hespera added. Corvin's eyes narrowed. "Unless what?" "Unless someone who truly loves him kisses him first." Hespera's gaze slid unhurried across the room. "Before your princess ever gets the chance." Corvin scoffed. "Everyone has kissed him. No one loves him. We have established this." "You don't know much," said Pell, appearing at Hespera's shoulder, inspecting her nails, "if you ask me." And Wren realized every single person in the room was looking at her. Every one. "Oh, will you stop?" She backed up a step. Her heart was going like a war drum. I am not in love with him." She might have admitted it to herself. Once. In the dark. She might have known it every day, for 4 years. But she would sooner die than say it aloud, in a room full of witnesses and a smirking foreign spy. "Now would be a fine time, dear," Hespera said, patient as stone, "to finish what you started upstairs, before the interruption." "You don't mean—" Corvin was on his feet. "You cannot mean to let a maid—" "Don't you dare!" the guard from the bedchamber snarled and punched him square in the nose with a crack that echoed off the walls. Corvin sat back down, hard, hand to his face, and Wren stood frozen, the whole weight of it pressing down on her, because this was the thing she had spent 4 years running from. The kiss that would tell her the truth. The one that would either give her everything or take away the last small hope she'd been living on. What if it doesn't work? She thought. Nearly buckled her knees. What if I love him, and it still isn't enough? What if I bare my whole heart in front of all of them, and he sleeps on, and they all watch me fail, and then I have to live the rest of my life knowing? She stopped the thought. Because it didn't matter. Because whether or not her love was enough, whether or not she survived the humiliation, the king needed her. The kingdom needed her. And there was not one other person in all the world who could do this thing. She was at last the only one who could. "Right," she said, and her voice came out steadier than she felt. She walked to the bedchamber. They all trailed after her, the whole ridiculous procession, and she climbed the stairs and crossed to the great bed where Rowan lay, and she looked down at him, at the dark hair on his forehead, at the face gone soft and young in sleep, at the boy who had chased her through gardens and held her hand in the dark and called her Freckles, because it was the only way he'd ever found to make her look at him. She knelt beside him. "On the lips," Pell said helpfully from the doorway. Wren closed her eyes. "I have loved you my whole life," she told him silently. "And I never once told you. And if you don't wake, you'll never know. So wake up. Please, please wake up. Because I cannot do this world without you in it teasing me, ruining my clean floors being impossible. Wake up!" She leaned down, and she pressed her lips to his. For one endless heartbeat, nothing. His mouth was warm and still beneath hers, and the world hung suspended, and Ren's heart hammered against the certainty of her own failure. And then he breathed. A deep, shuddering breath, his chest rising under her hand, and his lips moved against hers, and a sound came from him, low and disbelieving, and Ren pulled back with a gasp just as his eyes opened. Golden, clear, focused, fixed entirely on her. The room erupted. She barely heard it, because Rowan was looking at her the way a man looks at the sun after a long time in the dark, and his hand had come up to catch her wrist as though she might vanish. "Freckles," he rasped, and Ren burst into tears. Not the delicate kind. The ugly, gulping, humiliating kind right there in front of everyone, and she scrambled to her feet and swiped at her face and said, "Good. You're awake. Wonderful. I have things to do." And she fled. She actually fled. From a king, whom she had just woken, with true love's kiss, in front of the entire court, because it was one thing to save him. It was another thing entirely to stay in that room while he looked at her like that, and made her hope out loud. They caught Corvin trying to slip out in the confusion. Garrick saw to that, and Ottoline denied her stolen throne, wept furious tears, and demanded to leave, and no one stopped her. But that was hours ago. Now the morning was full and bright. Ren had hidden herself in the library of all places, polishing a table that did not need polishing, because the whole palace had learned by now that she had woken the king with a kiss, and she could not walk 3 feet without someone gawking. Bly had proposed to her twice as a joke. She had thrown a boot at him. The truth was she was thinking of leaving, of asking whether the Eastern estate needed a housekeeper, somewhere far from wagging tongues and knowing looks. Somewhere she would not have to see Rowan every day and remember the moment everything had changed, and she still didn't know what it meant. "You've been," said a voice from the doorway, "remarkably difficult to find. For a woman who lives in the same building." She didn't turn. She knew the voice. She knew the scent. Pine and wood smoke closer now, moving into the room. "I've been busy," she said. "So I've heard." Dry, amused, and underneath it, something else. Dusting. For hours. It's a wonder you can lift your arms. He came around in front of her. She kept her eyes on the table. "You didn't come find me," he said, and the teasing had gone out of it. There was hurt in it now, and undisguised, the kind he'd never once let her see. "I sent for you. Twice. I wrote to you. You didn't read them, did you?" She said nothing. "Freckles." His voice dropped. "Look at me." "Don't." Her hands had gone still on the rag. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Look at me like you—" She stopped. "Like you care. Like I have some power over you." She couldn't say either one. "Don't." She tried to step past him. He didn't stop her. And for one terrible moment her heart cracked wide open because he was letting her go. And wasn't that exactly what she'd always feared? That if she ever stopped being difficult, he'd simply, "Then I'll read it to you," he said from behind her. "The last letter, since you won't read it yourself." She kept walking. "Freckles," he began reciting, and she froze in the middle of the library floor. "I've been told the most impossible story. That for the space of a single night I missed my own ball, was kissed by 100 women, and woke against all reason to you. I would not have believed a word of it." "I was busy," she said to the wall, "except that your scent still lingers on me, and it has haunted every breath I've taken since I woke." "Stop. Ren, come find me, please. Let me be clear for once in my life and stop hiding behind a rag," He paused. That last part I added just now. She turned around, and he wasn't smiling. That was the thing that undid her. He wasn't smiling at all. The king who smiled at everyone who hid his whole self behind that easy golden grin was standing in the library with his jaw tight and his eyes bright, with something that might have been tears, and he was not smiling. "Do you love me?" he said. "Rowan, everyone tells me the spell only breaks for love, true love, and you're the one who woke me." He took a step closer. "So I have to ask, could you possibly, after all these years, feel for me even a fraction of what I've felt for you since we were children?" "Stop it." The tears were coming again, and she hated them. "This isn't funny. Do I look amused?" He didn't. "You don't love me," she said, shaking her head, backing into the shelves. "You can't. You've had 100 women. I told most of them about you." She stopped. "What?" "Those 100 women." He came closer, slow, careful, as though she were something that might bolt. "They were never confused about my heart, Ren. Half of them I simply asked to play along, to be seen with me, so that no one would ever guess where I actually looked." "Play along," she whispered. "Play along at what?" Rowan drew a breath. "It started years ago," he said, "when I understood that I loved you, that I wanted to make you my queen, and that my father would sooner see you gone than see it happen." His voice thinned. "So I tested him. I found a kitchen girl, Nerys. I asked her to help me spread a rumor, to let it seem she and I were close, so that when I went to my father and spoke of marrying a common girl, he'd think I meant her. Not you. Never you. I had to know what he'd do. And I had to make sure that whatever he did, it fell on someone I hadn't, on someone other than you." The room tilted. Every piece of the last 4 years came apart and rearranged itself in front of her. "When you told your father?" Ren said, and her voice had gone to nothing, about the common girl, the one who meant everything to you. Her hand found the shelf behind her. "That wasn't Nerys." "No. That was you." He said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world, like it had always been true, and she had simply refused to see it. "It was always you, Ren. I stood in that study, and I told my father you meant everything to me, and he swore he'd have you disappear, and so I never said it again. Not to him. Not to anyone. Least of all to you. There is nothing common about her. She means everything to me." She'd heard it. Through the door. 4 years ago. And every day since she'd believed those words belonged to Nerys. They'd been about her. They had always been about her. "You heard it," Rowan breathed, watching her face. "Didn't you? You were there, and you thought—" His eyes closed. "You thought I meant Nerys, all this time. That's why you pushed me away. That's why you went so cold. I thought you were what everyone said you were." Her voice broke on it. "A flirt, a playboy. I thought you'd loved her and lost her and spent 4 years trying to forget her in the arms of every woman who—" "I spent 4 years," Rowan said, "trying to make you jealous." She stared at him. "After my father died, I could have stopped. I know that. But I'd learned something." He gave a rough, unhappy laugh. "I'd learned that the surest way to make your eyes follow me across a room was to dance with someone else. That your scent changed when another woman touched me. That you cared Ren even when you'd have died before admitting it. So I kept on, like a fool, hoping that one day the jealousy would crack you open and you'd finally see—" He stopped. "It was cowardice, dressed up as a game, and it cost us 4 years. 4 years. 4 years of misunderstanding. of aching, of two proud, wounded, frightened people standing on opposite sides of a door, each certain the other could never love them back. Well, Ren said finally, because her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might crack a rib, and she had no idea what else to do with any of it. I'm glad we cleared that up. Rowan blinked. That's it. What else is there? The old fear rose, reflexive, a shield going up. You're a king. I'm a maid. Nothing's changed. You can't just... At least let me read you the last letter. Despite everything, despite the tears still wet on her face, a small, helpless smile tugged at her mouth. You mean... recite. Recite. Yes. He cleared his throat, and there was the ghost of his old showmanship in it, but softer now, real. To the court and people of Ashmore. That's not addressed to me. No. It's the address I gave to the whole kingdom an hour ago. He took a step closer as he spoke, and did not look away from her once. As many of you know, during the recent ball, I was placed under an enchanted sleep by foreign agents. A plot to force our kingdom into an alliance it had already refused through coercion and cruelty. Another step. What you may not know is that the spell could be broken only by true love's kiss, and that I was woken by a woman who truly loves me, and whom I have loved in return since long before I understood the word. Her breath stopped. It is therefore my honor to announce that I will take this woman as my queen, that we will be wed before the month is out. He closed the last of the distance between them. Her name is Ren, he said softly. Ren will be my queen, should she have me. He paused. They laughed at that part. I think they assumed you'd say yes. A wet, startled laugh escaped her. Say yes, Rowan murmured, and he lifted his hands and cradled her face in them, his thumbs brushing away her tears. Say yes, Ren. And she wanted to. She wanted to more than she had ever wanted anything. But the fear was still there. The oldest one. The one that had kept her on her knees on ballroom floors her whole life. So she asked the question underneath all the others. The real one. The one that mattered most to a woman who had spent her whole life being no one. Why me? She whispered. You could have anyone. A princess. An alliance. A queen the world would bow to. And you're choosing the girl who scrubs your floors. Why? And Rowan didn't laugh. He didn't tease. He looked at her like the question mattered, because he understood finally that it did. Because you are not the girl who scrubs my floors, he said. You are the woman who ran across a ballroom the moment I fell, when 100 nobles stepped back. Who caught me before I hit the ground. Who spent a whole night with no rank and no title and no one's leave, protecting me and this kingdom with nothing but that impossible nose and that impossible will. His voice roughened. Every soul in this palace was born knowing they mattered. You had to fight for every scrap of it your whole life. And you are still the finest of all of them. You always were. I am not making you worthy by choosing you, Ren. You were worthy long before I had the sense to see it. The tears came freely now, and this time she let them. Because that was it. That was the thing she had never once been told in a life spent invisible on the wrong side of doors. Not I will lift you up. Not I will make you something. But you were already someone. I only just had the sense to see it. And besides, Rowan added, pressing his forehead to hers, and there was the old warmth back in his voice, the teasing thread she loved. If you don't say yes, I'll get my hands on that potion, drink it myself, and make you wake me all over again. In front of everyone. It's very undignified. You wouldn't do that to me twice. Ren laughed. Really laughed. The joy of it coming up from somewhere so deep, she hadn't known it was there. And she rose onto her toes, and she closed the last breath of distance herself because she was done waiting on the wrong side of doors, and she pressed her lips to his. Yes, she whispered against his mouth, and felt his smile bloom to match her own. Yes. 1 month later, Queen Wren of Ashmore stood on the high balcony and watched the sun come up gold across a kingdom that was impossibly hers to help hold. Corvin had been sent home in disgrace, his plot laid bare before every court on the continent. Draemore's armies had withdrawn from the border because a scheme only works in the dark, and Wren had dragged this one into the light. Isolde, who had been a fool and a pawn, but never truly cruel, had been sent home rather than to a cell because Wren had stood before the court and argued that a woman deceived is not the same as a woman guilty. And Nerys, who had carried 4 years of a lie that was never hers to carry, had been offered a place in the palace kitchens again with honor this time, and had wept when Wren offered it and stayed. Justice, not vengeance. It was the harder road. It was the only one Wren had wanted to walk. Strong arms came around her from behind, and she leaned back into her husband's chest with a sigh. "Any regrets, Freckles?" Rowan murmured, pressing a kiss below her ear. She considered it. Honestly. "One," she said. She felt him go still. She turned in his arms and gave him a slow, wicked smile. "I do miss having the authority to order you to clean up your own messes." Rowan laughed, that rich, warm sound, the true one, the one she'd spent her whole life pretending not to love. "As if being queen has stopped you from ordering me around." True. She rose onto her toes and brushed her lips to his. "Some things never change." "And some things," he said against her mouth, pulling her closer, as the light spilled gold over the two of them, change for the better. And Wren, who had spent her whole life on the wrong side of every door, who had learned at last that she had always been worth the seeing, silently agreed. Some things indeed